When you're working with a camera, whether it's for photography or videography, you can do all the planning in the world, but sometimes things just don't work out. I had a trip planned to Washington, D.C. Right during the cherry blossom, peak is what I thought was the cherry blossom peak. The thing about cherry blossoms, they don't peak for very long. In fact, after they peak, they're gone pretty quick. So you're just left with the trees and without the flowers. So it's critical to get there if you're doing photography or videography of it at the exact right time. And the window can be very quick as far as, the flowers peaking and looking perfect. I had a trip lined up to go based on past dates that the cherry blossoms were peaking. I kind of went towards the end of that window that I had, and I'll show you what I came up with. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is circumstances. I have 2 kids. They both go to school, and I have a day job. So, there's a lot of things to plan around when I'm out doing a scouting trip or a photography trip. So I had this DC trip lined up on a day where I didn't really need to be present at my day job. I could work mobile. And while my kids were at school. Life just has a way of coming at you sometimes, regardless of what your plans are. Welcome to Washington, D.C., home to some of the most iconic photography locations in the United States. Washington, D.C. is a very crowded space, so if you're trying to get photos with no people in it, you're not going to succeed very easily. So we find a parking place, which isn't the easiest in Washington, D.C., and we start walking the National Mall. As soon as we hit the National Mall, I noticed right away I didn't see any cherry blossoms. And so that kind of alerted me, and I didn't know if I was too early or too late. And as I got closer and closer to the cherry trees, I noticed the blossoms had faded dramatically, and they were just full peak 5 days before that or so. So cherry blossoms were off the table as far as photography goes, but there was some really beautiful other locations that I think most of you will recognize, and that I was able to put my style, my flavor, my capture on. I had this trip planned for a certain day where I could get some flexibility with my day job. But first thing in the morning, a plan change happened where my daughter needed to go with me. So I figured she'd be able to take her camera and try to get some shots. When I'm recording footage for a Chasing the Shot show on my YouTube channel, I typically do it by myself. That way I can concentrate on what I'm doing, and I can do some vlog style on location speaking to the camera to kind of help the viewer relate to, what I'm experiencing at the moment. And what I quickly found out with my 8-year-old daughter with me is, my concentration is far but focused on trying to get that, that on-camera discussion. But we were able to walk around and try to get some photos of some epic locations. And as we walk around the Washington Monument, I noticed that the sun is just behind it, creating a perfect shadow. And if I can get the exposure right, I know this is going to be a wonderful photo. Every corner I turned, there were some faded cherry blossom blooms to remind me that I got the timing wrong on this shoot. I'd been putting this together for, months and months, and it just didn't work out. However, walking around Washington, D.C., you see some really historic and powerful sites when it comes to the United States history. When you're there and you see some of these iconic sites that you've seen on TV and that you've seen many pictures of, it's just completely different in person. It's much more real, but it's much more powerful. I think a lot of times we lose the history and the reason for a lot of these iconic locations. And when we're able to see them in person, it's just awe-inspiring, and it helps bring back the meaning of these types of locations. Like the Washington Monument has 2 different shades of stone, and that's because it was approved and part of it was built, and then the construction was stopped due to a down economy. And then when they restarted the construction again, they couldn't get the same stone they had started with. So we have 2 different shades of stone, and you almost never see that kind of thing in photographs or on TV. But when you're in person, it's just so much more powerful, and it means so much more. And that's the kind of inspiration you need to create great photography. So this trip was just a perfect example of how you have to be flexible whenever you're planning your photography. You have to be able to, make decisions in the moment of things that are happening around you, the circumstances. And in this case, it wasn't all bad. I got to spend the day with my daughter and see some iconic locations. I didn't get any cherry blossoms, but I did get some excellent photographs, and I got to spend a lot of quality time with my daughter while chasing the shot.